It's time to talk a little baseball and beer right now with this man who joins us every Wednesday at this time to offer up analysis from Fangraphs.com. He is the one and only Jay Jaffe, and we have him back this week on the show. Jay, good to see you, and obviously a lot of baseball to cover on the program right now. Let's begin with the Padres, considering so many players are now on the COVID IL. It started with Tatis, but contract tracing has put some other members of that infield on the IL. And then we hear Will Myers today, and mass call-ups from El Paso as the team is trying to at least piece together a competitive group in their absence. We were wondering if COVID would have a huge hit on the baseball world. And for the most part, things have been under control. And now you see some very big names. I mean, Tatis and Myers, two of the bigger names on the Padres. And now they're going to have to win without him for a while.
Yeah, it's a tough break for the Padres, who've kind of gotten off to a sluggish start. They're 20-16 now, but they haven't really blown anybody away. They've been lucky. I think that the Dodgers have been even more sluggish. They're 19-17, and it's the Giants leading the division. But yeah, losing Tatis and losing Myers and several other players, it's in the short term. That's going to be a problem. I think it's good news if he's asymptomatic. We don't know what his actual vaccination status was, but still, you don't want to see any team-wide outbreak. We did see one with the Nationals early this year, and we've seen them struggle since that. They had their opening day pushed back 5 days, and they've stumbled out of the gate. They had 9 players go on the list. So the Padres, I think maybe generally a higher level of impact players going on the list, but still, this is rough.
Speaking of rough, I think the Yankee coaches situation is even harder to understand and fathom, just because they've had positive tests after getting vaxxed during the spring, which we haven't heard anything like that. We haven't even heard anything like that outside of baseball right now, Jay.
Yeah, the Yankees coaches, they got the Johnson & Johnson shot this spring, and the statistics that are floating around out there that the Johnson shot was only a single shot was only 60 to 70% effective at preventing infections versus 90 plus for Pfizer and Moderna. Maybe not an apples to apples comparison if you read the literature, just because of the time those things were tested, and there were more variants out there when the J&J vax was tested. But that's my understanding, at least. I'm not an epidemiologist here, but the possibility of some breakthrough infections is always there, and it appears that's what's happening. We know that the variants are gaining footholds around the country, and this may have been related to that. The good news is that even when if you're vaccinated and you still manage to get COVID, it's usually a much less serious. It's way decreases the likelihood of hospitalization or fatality. So I think this is an inconvenience, and it's a serious situation if these coaches have other symptoms, obviously, but still better to be vaccinated than not if you get this. And for the Yankees, the fact that this did not spread to the players and who have been vaccinated more recently, the Yankees are one of the teams that has reached the 85% threshold to have their protocols relaxed at least somewhat, is noteworthy, and hopefully this is as far as it goes. You don't want to see any teams or players hit hard by this to the point that it affects their ability to compete.
No doubt about it. We're talking baseball right now with Jay Jaffe here on Sports Talk as we continue. Hottest team in the game, the New York Mets. They've won 7 in a row, and they beat up on Matt Harvey today and got some revenge on him. Explain how a team that we've always kind of waited for something like this to happen. I mean, the way this team was built, you kind of thought the Mets would be near the top of the division, and now all of a sudden they're playing good baseball. They're doing it with Francisco Lindor batting 200, Jay.
Yeah, well, look, 200 is actually an improvement on where he was last week. He was in the throes of an 0 for 21 slump, and then when they fired Chili Davis and their assistant hitting coach, which I know we talked about a week ago. Their results weren't lining up with their with their batted ball stats. So it seemed likely that some positive regression was in store. And I think that's part of what we're seeing here. Maybe some changed approaches. I have not had a chance to watch the Mets closely in the last week. I know they beat up on Matt Harvey today. It was an emotional homecoming for Harvey, his returning to Citi Field and getting a nice little ovation there for all that he did for the Mets in a previous lifetime. He was off to a good start this year. It'll be interesting to see how he rebounds from this with seven runs in 4 1/3 innings here, I think it was. But it seemed to be only a matter of time before the Mets things came together for them, and now that's happening. And suddenly they're looking a lot better. They're a game and a half up in the NL East and looking like one of the stronger teams in the league, which is what we projected.
And again, the question to me is going to be the health of Jake DeGrom. He's been battling some ailments, whether it's the back, and as long as it's not the forearms, I think Met fans will, breathe a sigh of relief. But clearly, he's a guy that when he's so good, and I don't understand it. You're not supposed to keep adding miles per hour to your fastball every single year like he has, and he's such an anomaly when you talk about guys that just continue to see their stuff get better with age every season.
Yeah, he's just freaking dominant. The adding the velocity, it's either a deal with the devil or just consistent mechanical improvements. I think what we've seen is really owes to the latter. He has basically added about a mile an hour every year over the course of his career, to the point where he's throwing 100 routinely. Now it's going to take a toll on your body. Luckily, it hasn't been the arm, although I do worry. This is a guy who already had one Tommy John surgery when he was in college. That second Tommy John surgery is particularly hard to come back from if you're a pitcher who needs it. And DeGrom, who's a high velocity pitcher, throws about half of his pitches as fastballs, is kind of right in that danger zone. Not unlike Dustin May, who we saw last week went down with Tommy John surgery. I think the DeGrom's progression mechanically shows that he's got clean mechanics, so he's probably at a bit of a lower risk there. But you still, I do worry about him. To some degree, I openly fretting about it when I write about his future and his potential Hall of Fame case that he has to hold up. But luckily, this doesn't seem to be a big deal. I know that some people were taken aback by the fact that the MRI on him came back clean, and yet the Mets put him on the injured list anyway. That's precaution. You still need, even if it's just stiffness and soreness, you still need him to get right, because you don't want him trying to pitch through a minor injury, because that can have serious ramifications in terms of putting your mechanics out of whack. As it was, I thought the Mets were pushing it a little bit, given that they didn't put him on the IL after that initial lat problem.
Jay Jaffe talking baseball, and a little bit later talking beer with us here on Sports Talk as we continue. You can check out his work at Fangraphs.com. You wrote about Byron Buxton a few days back, and I feel bad because he was off to such a great start. We know the tool set, and it seems like he's finally starting to live up to all those hype that we had years ago when he was a prospect. But Jay, the man just cannot stay healthy, and it's tragic because when you watch him compete, he's so good, but it seems like it's almost impossible to try to ever get a full season out of Byron Buxton.
Yeah, it's hard because he plays with an all-out intensity. That's really, I think part of the attraction there. I just, in the I showed when I wrote about him the other day, I showed there was a sequence there in the top of the 7th inning of this game. He runs into the center field wall trying to steal a home run. It was unsuccessful, tumbles to the ground, wasn't hurt. But then in the bottom of the 7th inning, he didn't run out a ground ball, and you wonder if he was already starting to feel something there. And then in the 9th inning, he's running out that grounder, or he doesn't even bother to run out the grounder. It pulls up lame, and that's when he got hurt. He's walking there, and so I wonder, if this wasn't just a single play, if it was actually a progression there, and if what happened on the defensive side had an impact on the hip injury. Fortunately, it doesn't seem like it's as serious as Luis Robert's injury for the White Sox, which could cost him until maybe until September, maybe even longer than that. This is still going to be weeks rather than days, and it's a shame because he was the best hitter in the American League this side of Mike Trout when he got hurt.
Jay, along the lines of the AL Central, since we were just talking before the break about Byron Buxton, the White Sox, minus two of their best young outfielders, are still in first place. It's a great little race between them and the Indians, and the Royals are not that far back right now. I still wonder if Tony La Russa can keep this thing together, especially with the pitching has been so good. You look at Carlos Rodon's resurgence and Giolito and company and Keuchel. Sometimes you say if you have really good pitching, you can get through even when you have injuries. And without Jimenez and Roberts, I wonder if the bats will be able to keep this thing going and keep the White Sox at the top of the Central.
Well, they're just about every position for the White Sox. They're getting league average production or better. Even at catcher, where Yasmani Grandal has one of the most ridiculous batting lines you'll ever see. Batting average of 121, on base percentage of 372 because he's walking 28% of the time, slugging 288, and that comes out to a 108 WRC plus. That's his production relative to the average hitter is 8% above average, and that so they're getting good offense even by some of these guys who aren't maybe up to expectations. Jose Abreu being another one. So they've gotten lucky, but the defense in left field is a problem. Andrew Vaughn is not cut out for that. They really don't have a left fielder. Losing Robert for any amount of time is a problem because he's an elite center fielder. The pitching though, they've got some pitching depth and Carlos Rodon and Dylan Cease both coming around, I think is a huge deal for them. I think this is the team that's going to win the AL Central. The Royals are a nice little story, but they're also 16-18 now. Cleveland is 19-14. I did not think this Cleveland team was nearly as strong as some of the ones in the years past because they've traded away so much starting pitching. But right now they're just a game behind the White Sox. And it's the Twins who've fallen on their faces. I wrote about them in the context of Buxton's injury. They've had so many things go wrong for them, some injuries, and really a lot of regression from Kenta Maeda and from their bullpen. They've kind of dug themselves a hole that I don't think they can get out of.
Less than a week ago, you wrote about Albert Pujols, especially after the Angels officially cut ties with him. We were doing a lot of the research, the stats, and looking at his body of work. And I know that there are some that will make the argument that he's better than Luke Gehrig just because of the time period and the way the game has changed from the pitches and everything thrown back in the 20s and 30s till now. But really, those are the two guys that probably are at the very top of the first base list. I know your Jaws list. So as you look at Albert Pujols and we see that ridiculous 10 years he established in St. Louis and then his time spent in Anaheim with the Angels, how do you think he's going to be remembered as among the all-time greats?
I think, the further we get from this kind of unseemly end, I think the more we'll remember those first 11 years in St. Louis, the two championships, the MVP awards, consistent 7 to 8 WAR seasons, and I mean he was the best. He was Mike Trout before Mike Trout, and part of I think the reason that he's number 2 on the Jaws list behind Gehrig is because he was an excellent defender too. Was not a one-dimensional player. I mean, he played all around the diamond when he came up, including a lot of time in left field, which is a place you stick guys who aren't great in the field. Likewise, first base has a lot of guys who really can't play anywhere else. But Pujols was always exceptional there, and even as he declined, he was still a pretty solid first baseman, and which I think made it harder to push him into a DH role that might have served his body a bit better. But the last half decade has been rough, and it's been tough to watch, even as he's gotten to these milestones that are just inner circle numbers. 6, passing Willie Mays on the all-time home run list, and the all-time record for hits among a player born outside the U.S. I mean, those are some pretty major accomplishments, and I hope we're able to remember the great Albert Pujols more so than the expensive dud Albert Pujols when it's all said and done.
I'm with you on that one. Speaking of dud, your most recent column is about the extra innings rule in baseball and how the runner on second to start the inning, you're pretty much over and done with that. I mean, you think baseball is going to get to that point where they're going to eliminate this as well and realize that it's putting relievers in almost an impossible situation every inning, knowing that you could essentially give up a ground ball for your first out, a sac fly for your second out, and record your first 2 outs, and yet you've still given up a run.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think last year was the time to experiment with it. There was a premium on saving time. There was room in this very surreal 60-game season. Everybody was walking on eggshells and just happy to have any form of baseball back whatsoever. But this year, I think the arguments in favor of trying this extra innings or continuing with this extra innings experiment kind of fall on their face. And I think that it's, as I say, it's worn out its welcome. I don't think it makes for a compelling brand of baseball. As I noted, we're seeing 6 times the number of sacrifice bunt attempts in extra innings as in regulation innings, and 21 times the number of intentional walks. That's not something that fans want to see. You don't go to the ballpark wanting to see intentional walks. I mean, yes, it's strategy, but it's the dullest kind of strategy imaginable. And I do hope that they reconsider this. I mean, there was some, the players were in favor of bringing it back, this winter. I worry that they're going to overlook it in the negotiations for the collective bargaining agreement, which are, after all, going to be quite contentious, and when it comes to financial matters. And this is a very small bone they can throw the owners who seem to like it a lot more. Rob Manfred's gushing about this rule, which immediately should make everybody more suspicious of it. If they weren't already, but. Yeah, I think most fans are already pretty sick of the rule, and it's worn out its welcome. So I hope it's an experiment that ends soon.
You can check Jay out at Fangraphs.com. Follow him on Twitter at J_Jaffe. He's got a great story coming up here soon on Max Scherzer. Keep an eye out on that one, folks, at Fangraphs. But let's wrap it up with your beer pick of the week, Jay. What would you like to profile for our listeners this week?
Okay, so the other, I guess it was last weekend or a weekend before last, actually. I was in the neighborhood of Other Half Brewing and stopped by and bought myself some cans there and got some really good stuff. The one I want to profile, unfortunately, I don't have a can to show you here, is their Forever Green IPA. I've always said that anything with forever and anything with green those are 2 lines that Other Half produces that I'm a big fan of. The forever means their session weight beer. Their green means their Citra driven beer. This was the best of both worlds for those. A nice fruity, citrusy with a little bit of tropical, a little creamy on the front end, and some piney, resiny bitterness on the back end. It comes in. It's only 5.5% ABV, but it really has enough flavor that you don't miss the extra alcohol at all. This is a fantastic beer, and I think it just shows how far ahead of the game they are. When you get a fresh can of that, you are living large.
Love it. Hey, listen, great stuff as always. Look forward to having you back with us next week and talk more baseball and beer, Jay.
All right, sounds great, Steve. Thank you.